It's pretty awesome. It's like walking into like a Radio Lab episode or something. Also, the fact that we're in a science museum makes me feel a little bit more comfortable wearing this headset thing. I'm like putting myself in the future. So thank you all so much for coming out. I will be candid, this is my first time in Miami. Yeah, I know. So I got in around 1:30, and it was pretty amazing. But I think the really amazing part was all the prep leading up to this. So I'm really good friends with Mariana and Jess from Design Thinking Miami. Have watched their progress kind of growing down here, and they said, "Hey, why don't you come down?" I was like, "Awesome, sounds great. What do you want to do?" And they're like, "Well, we've got these like 18 amazing organizations lined up, and we're all coming together to create just an incredible weekend." And it really turned on the light bulb. There's a lot of cool stuff going on here. So it seems like the most amazing time. All the people I've talked to have kind of validated that. So, all right, it's working. So my name's Andy Hagerman. I'm one of 5 co-founders of the Design Gym, which we'll talk a little bit about later. The Design Gym was started in New York City about 3 years ago. If you guys are into all that social stuff, you can find us at the Design Gym. And our mission is really to empower people and organizations with the tools to create change. This is kind of a lofty mission or vision of what we try to do, but the main thing about this is really these 2 words of empowerment and change. When we started the Design Gym, the thing that we really wanted to focus on was not going in and pretending to be the smartest person in the room, right? We wanted to help and truly partner with people so that they had the tools, whether they were an individual starting a business, whether they were a Fortune 50 company, to start imagining what does the next chapter of their business look like. Obviously, we're in a pretty complex business arena right now, so how do people evolve to that? And how can we make a more open conversation about it? Who's familiar with the notion of design thinking already? A few people. Cool. What do you guys know about design thinking? I'm going to make this might feel a little bit more interactive than some past sessions you've been to. Yeah?
Well, design thinking is design solutions that meet the demand of customers and trying to understand their customers.
Yeah, design solutions meeting the needs of the customer. Awesome. What else? Yeah?
Prototyping is a big part of it.
Yeah, prototyping is a big part of it. Totally. What else do you guys know?
Listening is a big part of it.
Listening, yes. We're going to talk a lot about listening tonight in a couple different ways. Yeah, back in the back.
Design thinking is empathic.
Say it again, the last word?
It's focused on empathy.
Yes, focus on empathy. That's kind of like the core emphasis of design thinking. So for those of you guys that aren't familiar with design thinking, some of you might have seen this. This is kind of the backbone of what design thinking is all about. It shouldn't feel overly like rocket science, right? This is pretty common sense stuff, but it's not applied in a lot of ways, and that's what we're going to talk a lot about. So the notion is that most times when we want to solve a problem, right, we say, there's a problem that exists, does it make sense for the business, right? Is it something that we can do? And do we have the technology to actually meet that need? Can we build it? Not necessarily tech, but some type of material to do it. And usually, if those 2 overlap somewhere, we say, great, opportunity, put a project plan on it, make it happen. Right? This is not a bad way to start a business, grow a business. Lots of businesses are started this way. What design thinking really advocates for is bringing a little bit more of that empathic view in, right? So thinking about who are the people, the users and the stakeholders that are involved at every step of that new idea or challenge, and how can we learn more about their behaviors and their emotions and their needs that underlie why we as a business should go forth creating this thing? What is the value it will create for them in the long run? So there's a lot of people out there talking about design thinking. It's been around for about 30 years, which a lot of people don't recognize. Started mostly on the West Coast, kind of born out of the Stanford D-School movement. So the way we talk about it isn't necessarily groundbreaking. I think what we've been really experimenting with a lot in New York, where we're based, is the application of it, right? How can we break this type of thinking down to start creating new conversations within organizations, outside of organizations, and across, probably most importantly, across organizations and people. Cool? Awesome. I'm always curious what the response is going to be when I ask a question like that. I'm just like, cool? And it's a little bit different every time. That was a test. You guys passed. It was awesome. All right, so 3 of the ways that we're really thinking about kind of experimenting with this design thinking notion, right? And these are kind of the 3 pillars of our business. I'm going to talk a little about each one, some examples of how we're using it. The first is we build community. So when we started 3 years ago, we had no idea what the heck we were doing. So we came together, as 5 of us were like, this stuff's cool, we should teach about it, let's do a class. And we taught a class, and all of a sudden this amazing group of people started to form around it. And that's still kind of at the core of our business. The second piece is we support companies. So we actually bring some of this stuff into organizations and use it as a language to help them kind of take that next step, whatever it might be. And the third is creating collaboration. So that's actually connecting our companies and our community so organizations can start co-creating with their customers. What does it mean to have your customer at an active seat at the table as you're developing your new product and business ideas? So tonight, what I wanted to talk about, I'm going to share some examples a little bit more concretely about some of this stuff. I'm going to talk about, start by talking a little about our point of view on design thinking, what it is, how it can be used. Then I'm going to move into a little bit more of the process. What is kind of the bigger picture of where this stuff can go, and connect that to sharing a little bit more of the background on kind of our business and some of the work we've been doing and how we've been playing with it. Cool? That's awesome. That actually wasn't a test, that was improv. Cool, so the first thing that I want to talk a lot about, how many of you guys have been in an organization or a startup or a team that held either creativity or innovation or entrepreneurial spirit as one of the values, right? It was something that you heard, yeah. Amazing, right? Probably like 75% of the room. It's a common thing, right? What company doesn't want to have innovation on the wall right next to, hard work and rigor? These are good values to have in a company. Now, what's that? Yeah, yes, exactly. Yeah. The thing we want to talk a little bit about is, this is something we hear a lot, right? Companies, organizations of all walks of life, and people come and say, we want to have a culture of innovation, or I want to be more innovative, I want to be a design thinker. Can you help me? And we're like, well, let's see about that. We don't want to promise too much without getting to know you a little bit first. And I think this is kind of the big reframe of how we're thinking about design thinking. A lot of agencies will come and they'll say, yes, we can deliver a culture of innovation through this amazing project. But what we've been reflecting a lot on is, what does it actually mean to have a culture of innovation? And you really can't have a culture of innovation without first having a good culture. And I think that's where a lot of organizations are struggling now, is they're trying to figure out, what does it mean to bring these new tools and these new mindsets and interests into an organization? So this is what we really emphasize first, is how do you get that mindset? And that's where we have started thinking about, what does design thinking look like on a daily basis? Stepping back from the process that a lot of people know, things like prototyping and storytelling and brainstorming. On a daily basis, if we're committing to having innovation be one of our core values, what does that mean? And how does that show up? So what I want to do is, I'm going to get you guys active a little bit. There's probably a wave of fear coming across some of your faces. I promise it won't be that bad. So what I would like you guys to do, if you can, I would like you to find a neighbor either on one side or the other. Now you're probably going to be interacting with a few people around you, so it doesn't really matter who you pick. So find a neighbor. Go ahead, shake their hand, say hello if you don't know them yet. Alright. That's enough, guys. Not too much fun. Calm down. Calm down. I'm seeing high fives. That was not part of the game. Alright, so what I would like you guys to do. Bonus points. Can anyone tell me what movie this is from? Great Gatsby. Alright, cool. A lot of people didn't like this movie. I thought it was pretty awesome. What I would like you guys to do, has anyone in here never planned a party before? Luckily I can't see, so it doesn't really matter if you're raising your hand or not. With your partner, I want you to plan a party in the next 2 minutes. Yeah, that's not the hard part. You haven't even gotten there. You're going to plan a party with that person. Now it can be anything. anything you want it to be. So, for example, I might throw out, if I'm one of the partners, I would say, I would like to have a party on the moon, Andy. Oh yeah? Now I can respond with anything I want, but I have to start my response with yes, but how will people get to the moon? Now I can come back, I can say whatever I want, but I have to start with yes, but. Alright, now you go back and forth for 2 minutes. The party can take any direction at once. Go. Teachers in the room when I do it, because immediately the teachers are like, yep, got it. It's like as soon as it happens, it's cool. Alright, any good parties out there? Just, I would love to hear some good parties.
Shaved goat rodeo.
This is probably the most fun part, because I never know what's going to happen. Shaved goat rodeo, I think I heard.
Yes.
Yes, cool, awesome. Other good parties out there, yeah.
We have a party in the middle of the ocean with all these yacht owners. It's like they have like their boats together and then we
Nice, middle of the ocean, lots of yachts.
Fireworks and buffets.
Of course there's fireworks and buffets, yes, most definitely. What else? Let me hear one more party. Ethiopian water park, yeah. Drop the mic, awesome. Alright, cool. Alright, stepping aside from the actual parties you guys planned, what was the process like of planning that party with your partner?
Fun.
It's fun?
Yeah.
Yeah, tell me more about that. How did it show up? Why was it fun?
Well, because instead of being a pessimist, you start becoming an optimist because it's an original idea.
It's an original idea, right? So you're starting to move past pessimism, get some optimism? Alright, cool. What else? Yes?
A little bit challenging because you don't get a lot of traction when you're always countering the statement the same, but kind of going the opposite direction.
Alright, so a little bit challenging. You felt like you were countering a lot. Challenging. Yep. Who else?
Location.
Say it again?
Well, you think about location.
Locations?
Right. You know, locations where you would like to have a party.
Ah, so you guys got stuck on locations, or?
Well, you think about it. You know, you would think, maybe 3 or 4 locations.
Yeah, 3 or 4 locations? Yeah. Okay. Getting stuck on that? Alright, so what I would like you guys to do, we're going to plan another party. What improv folks do we have in the room tonight? Some improv people? Alright, you probably know where I'm going. Yeah, so we're going to plan another party. 2 minutes, completely new party, same partner. Instead of using the phrase yes but though, we're going to use yes and yes. Okay, completely new party, start again, 2 minutes, go for it. right, let's hear about some of the parties. We'll start with the parties first. Some good parties that came out. Toga? All right, what's happening at the Toga party? What's that? Fur togas, okay. That's it, you don't really need to go much further than that. Good to go. What else? Yeah, over here.
Skydiving to scuba diving, dog birthday party.
Whoa, wait, to dog birthday party? That took a different turn than I was expecting. All right, cool, I like it. Skydiving, right into scuba diving, right into a dog party. Awesome. Birthday party. Yeah, cool. Bike riding, sushi scavenger hunt. You guys are creative down here in Miami, I like it. Yeah, last one.
Cuban Independence Party at the top of the Statue of Liberty.
All right, I like it. Awesome. All right, so let's talk a little about the process this time. What was the process like this time? It was awesome. So you keep adding and adding? Yeah? All right, cool. Yeah.
It's like it becomes limitless, right? Like you start with one simple idea and all of a sudden you have like a million ideas that come from just that start.
Yeah. Did that one seed and it was kind of limitless. There's a lot of ideas we're building out of that thing. Awesome. What else? Yeah.
No friction.
No friction. Say a little more about that. How'd that show up for you and your partner?
So when it was yes, but every idea had like a pause and I was like, oh, okay, how am I gonna? But as soon as it was like yes and, I was just like, let's add to this. This is awesome. Like you just build.
Yeah, cool. So you just kind of took off and you just kept building. Yeah. Very good. Yeah.
Things can get out of control really quickly.
Things get out of control. Yeah. Was Beyonce at anyone's party? Yes. Oh, I should have guessed. Yeah, so that's a great point, right? Whose parties started to breach a little unreasonable? Get a little out there. I imagine most here, except for the fur toga, I think most everyone should probably raise their hand. Yeah, so the reason we talk about this, right, the differentiation between yes, but, and yes, and shouldn't be that surprising, right? Yes, and is a kind of positive, forward-moving statement. It's an affirmation. Now, on the flip side, how many of you guys have been in a meeting before, or discussion, or sitting around a bar with your friends, and someone throws out an idea, and immediately someone's like, nope, won't work? How's it feel? I like post-traumatic stress syndrome, like I felt it through the room. Yeah. Buzzkill? Yeah. What else?
Picture.
Say it again?
I draw a picture.
You draw a picture. Yeah, okay, that's good, yeah. Yeah, it sucks, right? There's no way around it. It's terrible. But that happens all the time, right? So when we're talking about yes and versus yes but, it's about putting some structure behind that. That's the first thing I want to talk a little bit about. When we're talking about a mindset of innovation, we need to know when to be yes-anding and when to be yes-butting. I know, it's going to sound a little fun. Now this is again, it's very simple. The fact is how we start to use it and how we bring it into our everyday dialogue. So, open, explore, and close. All this is divergent and convergent thinking, right? Now the challenge of where this breaks down is when people are trying to open, at the same time some other people are trying to close. It doesn't work, right? That's when those feelings of hopelessness and stress and utter shit come out, right? Lack of a better word. I'm sure there's lots of better words, but so when we talk about open, explore, and close, it's not to say that you should always be a yes-ander, or the yes-anders are the ones that we want to have a company full of, right? If we had a company or a team full of yes-anders, you know, we'd be tying yachts together in the middle of the ocean all the time. It doesn't always make sense to be opening all the time. How many of you guys in this room are the ones when you walk in and you hear a big idea, you're the first person that's like, taking them off in your head. Too expensive, gonna take too long, not the right idea. Wave them loud and proud, guys. It's all right, you're a closer, right? Not a bad thing. We need those people to bring realistic, structural thinking into some of the big ideas we've got. The key is when to use which process, right? So open, explore, and close is really just a language to exercise with your team so everyone's on the same point at the same time. It's so simple. So simple, but you'll be amazed at how conversations can flow. So open, getting everything on the table, right? What are we solving? What information already exists? Where can we go from here? Explore. This is where emergent thinking happens. This also gets easily skipped. This is how are we mixing up the ideas on the table, right? How are we taking from some of the different places we did research and making sense of them? Now closing, up until this point we've been in a yes and mindset, right? Building on top, even if someone says an idea that I think is terrible, it's not my job at this point to say that it's terrible, right? That's not the mode we're in. Now when the team says, all right, now it's time to close, right? Those words are actually said. That's when you flip that trigger and you say, all right, what are some of those constraints we can start bringing in? And all it is, it's a very simple arc that you can bring into a conversation, you can bring into a meeting that's 15 minutes, or a full project that's going on for months. So this is one of the most important things. It's kind of the fundamental tool that we start with when we're thinking about mindset. The second one is something that someone mentioned earlier. So I would love to hear a little about what are some of the principles that you guys think makes a good conversation?
Listening.
Listening, yes. And how, I'm already seeing some people in the audience who are like, oh, I know where he's going with this, and I'm not happy about it. Sorry, you're stuck with me now. So listening, let's talk about that a little bit. What does a good listener do? What are some of the principles of good listening or a good conversation?
Asks questions.
Asks questions, yes. What types of questions are good for listening? Open-ended questions, right? Yeah. You want to hear that person, so you want to actually have them telling you something. Yeah.
I was just answering.
That was the one. Cool. Yeah.
Not talking after you've asked a question.
Not talking after you ask a question. Yeah. Awesome. So we talk about using silence, right? This is where being a good listener is a little bit different than being a good conversationalist, right? A listener doesn't feel like they should be talking all the time. They're comfortable being kind of the second in command when it comes to owning the conversation. What else? What are some of the good principles of listening?
Focus.
Focus. Yeah, how does that show up?
People are, somebody's talking, that you're paying totally attention to them as opposed to thinking about what you're going to say next, or thinking about something else, or
Looking on the phones.
talking on the phone.
Totally, yeah, texting. You're like, yeah, cool. Good story, man. Awesome. Yeah, focus on that person, right, and what they're telling you. That's probably the most important thing. Not letting yourself get too rabbled about what's next in your head. So listening is something that we talk a lot about, because I think it's something that gets often lost in the context of the work environment. Usually the first step is people are like, yeah, we listen to our customers all the time. And it's like, oh, cool, well, what does your coworker think about that? You're like, well, I haven't talked to him at all. What does your boss think? Well, we haven't actually had a good conversation about it, right? I don't know why they're passionate about this project. So some of the principles that you guys have covered, asking open-ended questions, right? We don't want to lead them in a direction. We want them to tell some stories. The difference between, again, being a good friend versus actually listening to someone is you shouldn't be talking the majority of the time. You want to be having less answers and asking better questions. It's kind of the mindset you want to have. And then the final one is follow an arc, right? Just like any good conversation, you want to build some rapport first before you get into the juicy part of it, and then have a nice kind of clean ending. Now the other big piece of this is to ask for specific stories. And two good ways to do that is, tell me about the last time you did that, or you'll hear me say this now over and over again. It's like, oh, interesting, say a little bit more about that. The reason we do this is because people love to talk in the abstract, the ideal state. So if someone asks me, Andy, tell me about your relationship with health. And I'm like, oh, well, I love the gym. It's such a big part of my life. I go just about every day. Been going for years now. I can't wait to have a family, and still that is a value with my kids. And they're like, oh, okay. I'm like, all right, well, tell me about the last time you went to the gym. Whoa. Well, it's been about 4 months now. And that was like, I had this treadmill for like 10 minutes, got a little winded and headed out. But this is honesty, right? And that's, if you just listened to me telling in my ideal state, you wouldn't have gotten anywhere close to the full picture, right? So you need to ask for how things show up in their mind, but also how they show up in their life. And that's how we start to truly understand that deeper set of emotions and behaviors and needs that people have, whether they're your coworker or your customer. All right, so what I would like you guys to do, this is the last activity, I promise. You guys did not sign up for this. I'm surprised at all. Yeah, tell me more about the next exercise. I'm going to take that. You guys are starting to give me a hard time now. I deserve it. So what I'd like you to do is find a new partner. Someone else that's around you, ideally someone that you, this is even more important, ideally someone that you don't know as well. And what I would like you to do is I would like one person to interview that other person for a mere 5 minutes. Not that bad, guys. We should have done this before the networking session because it would have made it a little bit easier. But you guys are warmed up now. So to make it easier, I created a few open-ended questions that you can use. Don't feel like you have to use these, but maybe good starting points. Tell me about something you're excited about right now. Tell me about something you overcame recently, and tell me about your work environment, what works, what's challenging. Now, if you feel yourself running out of questions, remember these two things that you can always have in your back pocket, right? You can always return to these to start the conversation and keep it going. Tell me a little bit more about that. Or, you said this thing, I found it pretty interesting. Can we talk a little bit more about that thing? I would like one person to interview their partner for 5 minutes. It doesn't matter who. You're both going to do it. So go ahead and pick that person, introduce yourself, and just listen for 5 minutes. Kindergarten, guys. Yes! Still works. All right. How'd the conversations go? My absolute favorite thing is when I have trouble stopping this exercise because it means it's worked. I actually saw one group, they kicked off their interview with a big old kiss, and I was like, yes, that is, listening is important in relationships. It will help with love life. Yeah, that's actually a true thing. All right, I would like you to flip. The person that was listening, I would like you to now be the interviewer. You already switched. All right, you broke the rules. Start over again. All right, I'm going to put 5 more minutes on the clock. Go for it. I wish you guys could stand up on stage when this activity happens, because it's pretty crazy. You can actually hear the energy, right? The levels in the room go up pretty significantly over that mere 10-minute course. So I want to talk a little bit about that. Let's start with the interviewer. All of you held this role at one point, hopefully. What was it like to be the interviewer? I don't want to hear actual stories that your partner shared with you, but what did it feel like to be the interviewer? What happened?
You wanted to find out about them.
You wanted to find out...
You're curious about them. Want to know more.
Awesome. Where did that curiosity come from for you, do you think?
Something they said.
People and things.
So interest, yeah, and something they said. Who said that? I can't see anyway, but something they said. Yeah, that's a really good answer, right? Allowing yourself to get curious about something you heard them say before. Yeah.
Not having an ulterior motive, as in your focus is more in just listening to what they have to say, as opposed to I'm trying to convey a message or I have to project things.
Nice, nice. Yeah, so not having an ulterior motive, like just genuinely listening to what they have to say. Yeah.
Finding out what common ground or what ideas or backgrounds you share.
Awesome. Yeah. So kind of figuring out what do we have in common, right? Where can we meet halfway to take the conversation forward? Yeah.
So it's a discovery process based on either desire to connect or build something together, create a solution for that person.
Yeah, it's a discovery process, right? To connect, to learn about them, to figure out there's some way I can help this person. Very cool. Yeah.
Empathy comes into play. For example, they touch something that you guys come to you and you want to know more about it and how they relate with the same problems or process.
Yeah, yeah, that empathy, right? Is there something at a deeper level, an emotional level, or something in our life that we can connect, relate on? Yeah, last one?
And adding on to the empathy as well, when someone becomes more than just like a head in front of you or next to you, they become a story. Like, you know yourself, you're a story, right? But like, when you finally have someone else who's just as much a story as you, like, you want to find out not only how much they can comment, like everything, it's just that turning point.
Yeah, definitely. So it's a good segue. Moving into the role of the person who is being interviewed, you might call it the interviewee. How did that feel? What did that feel like? Yeah.
Vulnerable.
Vulnerable, okay.
Because you want to make that connection and because I guess you want to keep it going and you want to be as honest as possible.
Yeah.
Like if they put you on the spot or if they ask you something, like, you want to make that connection so you want to be truthful.
Yeah, so you want to be truthful, right? You want to play your role in the conversation. Totally.
The feel behind the response. I think certain questions evoke just a void, generic answer. But if the proper question is answered, then the response is more passionate. It engages the conversation more.
And could you feel that as the person answering?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
These types of questions, definitely.
Yeah. So it's pretty wild. You guys probably wouldn't guess this about me. I'm quite an introvert, actually. And when you look at a scenario like we had earlier, right, for the last hour and a half, that is like terrifying business for me. Like going out and being surrounded by people and being vulnerable, right? Like how do I answer questions? What do I say? Having these questions, right, this is like your armor all the time. This is, you can listen to anyone and find something where you can connect with them, right? This can be the starting point for almost any conversation. Now the way that this plays in is, it really doesn't matter if you're starting a business yourself, doesn't matter if you are on a small team with a bunch of co-founders, 3, 4, 5 people, or if you're in a huge organization of like 20,000, 30,000. This is the first thing that will get chopped out in the midst of stress and tension and fast projects and fires exploding, right? Is that ability to listen. The challenging part about that is that this is probably your best bet at actually resolving a lot of those actual tensions amongst your team. So for example, I teach this stuff for a living, right? We talk about this all the time. My co-founders and I have 3 full-time partners, just yesterday got into a big argument about something. And because we didn't take the time to listen, right? We assumed what their emotions were and why they were making the decisions they were making. It wasn't until we cooled off, we're like, all right, let's go take a walk around the park, and said, well, tell me about what you were thinking when you made that decision. What led you to that? Oh, I heard you say the word ownership. Okay, like explain that a little bit more, how that shows up for you. And it wasn't until we got to those levels of information, got a little bit vulnerable, that you start to figure out, got it, it's not just that surface level story, it's actually all the things behind that story that are adding up to that surface decision that they made. It's the same thing like when you're walking around and you're like, cool, what's your name? What's your job? What's your title? Awesome, I'll see you later. And then you're like, wow, you actually don't know anything about that person. Those are the good examples, or times to start bringing this stuff in. So what I would encourage is practice this stuff. You get better at it over time. My favorite place to practice is in the taxi, right? Taxi drivers love to talk, there's nothing else to do. Just get comfortable asking open-ended questions. Uber is my absolute favorite. I have been talking about my Uber driver this morning all day because the stories I got from him, man, he was not vulnerable at all. That is the truth. What's that?
Was that in Miami?
Oh yeah, it was on the way from Miami, like 15 minutes, like yeah. That's true. Yeah. Awesome. So this is kind of the second piece, and the reason that I'm focusing so much on these things, these are baseline behaviors, guys. Like when we're talking about design thinking, we're talking about what does innovation mean? Like it's one of our values, but how does it show up on every day? Those are the things, right? Are we listening to each other? Are we able to have a constructive conversation where we can present ideas, but we can also close on ideas so we can move them forward? These are those baseline habits that you shouldn't be doing over the course of just a project or long amounts of time or spending lots of money on. It's just everyday stuff. Once you have that in place, then we can start talking about, all right, what does actual innovation look like for our team? And that's where this comes in. So this is the actual design thinking process. And you guys that have thought about or learned about design thinking, this probably feels pretty similar to what you have seen before. For those of you guys that love to solve problems or have gone to design school, this should feel like exactly like what you do already. It's just putting a process behind it. So, examine. Examine is all about understanding what's out there, right? Researching the problem. We're talking a lot about qualitative research today, but this is everything. This is quant, data, competitive research, trends analysis. Once you get your research, your stories, you move it into understand. Understand's all about synthesis, right? We've heard these stories, we've got all these good dots of information. How can we start drawing parallels between them? What's the relationships? By the way, if you guys are interested in this, if I see people taking pictures, if you go to our website, it's all on there for free. You can download all this stuff. So, you don't, wow, that was a cool response. I think. It was like, yeah. So understand, it's all about synthesizing, right? And what this means is, the output of understand is actually an insight. What is that key thing that we learned about someone that reframes how we're thinking about the problem, that is going to drive the solution that we actually put into the world? Once we have that insight, we go to ideation. My voice still cracks sometimes. We go to ideation, and ideation is all about not just having that one great idea, that one solution. It's about have lots of ideas so we can close on the best one. Once we close on that, take it into experiment, we build it. Most importantly, we learn from it, we test it, we share it with people and get feedback very quickly. And distill is all about storytelling. So if you've gone through this whole process, whether it's taken 45 minutes or 2 years, which it works for both, if you don't tell the story at the end and figure out of all the stuff we just learned, what's most important to share based on who I'm trying to share it with, it's for nothing. Storytelling is a very important part of that. So I'm going to share a quick story. I'm going to shift a little bit into talking about how some concrete examples of how this stuff shows up, and then also how we're experimenting with it kind of as Design Gym in New York. When I came out of college, I started working at a company. It was a large management consulting company, kind of a big four. Didn't really know what I wanted to do, and I was like, this will be good. I'll see a lot of stuff, I'll try a lot of stuff, and that'll help me understand. And I did. I saw a lot of stuff, tried a lot of stuff, and none of it really seemed that exciting to me. But one of the projects I was on was with a big healthcare company, and they came to us and they said, all right, our salespeople are having trouble connecting with our customers, and therefore we're seeing a decline in the amount of sales they're able to have with our customers. Okay? We said, awesome, we will build a training program for you, we will bring it into the system, and they will start to get better training, and that's how they will be able to better connect with their customers. Which brings me to this point. This is how most problems get solved, right? If you remember that business meets technology Venn diagram, they came to us with a problem, we gave them an idea, we built it, and then told the story about how successful it was. And it was successful, right? It wasn't a bad solution. It wasn't the best solution by far, though. And I think there was always this disconnect that I started feeling that there must be a better way to solve this. So coming out of that, I was exposed to a company called Jump Associates. It's kind of like a IDEO meets McKinsey is how they talk about it. We solve strategic problems in creative ways. And they exposed me to this world of design thinking. Now, this story came full circle when we started working with another healthcare company, pharmaceutical company. They said, listen, what does the future of allergies look like? I know you guys are like thrilled right now. You're just like, woo, that is just about the coolest project I've heard of. I was thinking the same thing. But we were following a slightly different process, right? We didn't start with the idea, but we went back and we spent a lot of time doing research, which is where I met Sylvia. Sylvia lives just outside of Sao Paulo. We did research out for about a month. We went to Texas, Brazil, and China, 3 areas affected by allergies in a significant way for very different reasons. Now, when we talked to Sylvia, I sat in Sylvia's house and I interviewed her for 5 hours. So like the 5-minute exercise, imagine over 5 hours, this woman that I do not speak the same language as, in her living room, who I've never met before. Now, Sylvia started telling me about the role allergies plays in her life. And she told me the story about her son, who was an 8-year-old boy who we met, and he had suffered with allergies his entire life. And she talked about not being able to sleep most nights because she was worried if he was going to have an attack in the middle of the night and not make it through to the next morning. And she told us stories about how in the middle of the night she did have to rush her son to the hospital on multiple occasions and watch the surgeons try to bring him back to life. And this affliction that she had, and this boy was only 8, and she talked about the future of his life when she's no longer able to play that role for him. But then, for us, what was important, she talked about the role that medicine plays in her life. And that's where all of a sudden, like, I'll never forget this interview, like, we're sitting on her couch and she is just like crying, telling me these stories about allergies, and I'm like, wait, what? Like, we're talking about allergies here. But we weren't talking about allergies, we were talking about the needs and the emotions and how it shows up in her life. And the clients that were with me during that interview, we walked out and they were just like, that totally changed how I think about the work I do. Right? They'd been doing this job for 20 years, but had never heard or done anything like that. And that's what it cemented in my mind, wow, there's a totally different way to be solving some of these challenges, right? Thinking about these things that we're bringing into the world in a pretty amazing way. So I worked there for a couple of years, and the challenge we started to see at that point, or I started to see, was we would finish these projects. They would take about 8 months. We'd do tons of research. And our clients would come up afterwards and say, hey, that was a lot of fun, really great work. You know, it was a great experience in my career. I wish we could do it in-house. You know, like, I feel like we've got so much knowledge in here that we could take advantage of really starting to bring these practices in. And that's really what led to the design gym about 3 years ago. So we saw this need, we saw people interested in it, but there was really no access to learn about it and how to start practicing. So we just started teaching a class on the weekends. This is our very first one. It's called the Weekend Workout. It was 2.5 days, Friday night through Sunday night. Super intense. And the crazy thing was that it sold out almost immediately. And the people that showed up, we didn't really know who was going to come. The people that showed up, so this guy started his own company, had just closed a Series A. This woman is an EVP at like a Fortune 50 insurance company. This girl's in design school. This girl, Stephanie, she runs a bunch of charter schools. And we were just like, who are these people? Like, they're from all walks of life, like all sorts of people. And it was generally just people who were trying to rethink the work they were doing. They saw immense opportunity to move into the next stage of their work, but weren't quite sure how to do it, and came to us to try and find some of the language to help them come up with that. And that became early on one of the mission or kind of core principles of our business, is really creating that platform where all these people can connect from across walks of life. We didn't see enough opportunities for that being able to happen. So although we talk a lot about design thinking is really just that language, right? That process structure that these people can start having conversations around. That's kind of how we think about it pretty often. Now, the next weird thing that came out of it was people would finish our workshop and say, what's next? Like, where do we go from here? What can I learn? How do I apply it? What do I practice? So we realized that building this community was all of a sudden something that we needed to do. So we started hosting happy hours. This is from a hackathon that we ran with a fashion organization, I think. And the cool thing about these people is where their journey, this was from about 2.5 years ago, where their journey has taken them. So Nancy here, she worked for a media agency, was frustrated with where she was at, ended up going to start or join a startup team in one of the first 4 or 5 people. Adam had just graduated from Rutgers with his MBA, wasn't sure exactly what to do with it. He didn't want to take the normal MBA path. So he went on to really start bringing this design thinking stuff into his life and is now on the design team at IBM. Davey became a consultant doing this stuff. This girl, you might see familiar, that's Jess, she started design thinking Miami down here with Mariana, both who were kind of early members of the weekend workout up in New York. She did not know I was putting that picture in there. So through that, we kept building the community, and then eventually organizations started coming to us with similar things and say, hey, we see this community of creative thinkers you're building publicly. We need something similar inside. How can we get more creative thinking going on inside our company? So we went on to start working with a wide variety of organizations. Honestly, most of these came through as just kind of partners during our weekend workshops, right? They would present a brief that our students would tackle over a couple hours. But some pretty cool stuff. And it applies, again, this thinking applies to everywhere from little startups like Kimi, who is kind of in their early stages, up to tech companies like Etsy, out to global nonprofits like Hagerman or UNICEF, and then big for-profits like Marriott, Capital One. Through that, we started thinking about what does it mean to be playing a role within these organizations. And as design thinking advocates, we quickly found out the human side of organizations is really the best side, right? Meeting these people inside and listening to the journey that they're trying to take for and with their company and figuring out how we can support them. So, wrapping up here, this is just a few case studies of some of the stuff we've done. This is our very first project. This is when we quit our jobs in that oh shit phase of we got a contract, what do we do? We took the team from Applegate on a field trip around New York. So this was actually just after, Applegate Farms, for those of you who don't know, they're one of the largest organic meats and cheese companies in the country. We took them to Etsy for a day and had them talk with the Etsy team about what it means to be a part of a mission-driven company, right? And just listen to each other and hear that inspiration. This is from the Department of Education in New York. These people are from all different roles. There's a principal, vice principal, this is a parent of one of the students, this is the guidance counselor. And again, that's speaking to how do we mix up some of those roles and create new conversations inside of organizations. Capital One, similar thing. There's everywhere from kind of SVP, EVP level, all the way down to literally new hires, people that just started 2 weeks ago, and kind of bridging some of those gaps and creating much more open conversation to move a little bit quicker. This is from a conference with some of our clients. One of the rules we set really early up front was that we only wanted clients we'd be friends with. You can see that has happened. That's me wearing the lobster hat in the background. Now, the other place where this applies is not just with our clients, but it's also for us, and how are we pushing the bar on the work we're doing. So we asked ourselves, what are some of the examine and understand phase? What are some of the trends we're seeing? Some of the insights that we have about where we want to move the business, and what do we enjoy, and what do we love more than tacos, right? So we created something called Design Taco in the Lower East Side last year. It was a pop-up shop, lasted about a week and a half, and we took over an abandoned lot and pretty much put up a pop-up innovation taco shop learning lab, where the backyard was fully converted into a functioning bar and taco zone, and then inside we would teach classes all day and host panels at night to bring different companies together. Now the cool thing here is that what happened is we would run classes with different organizations, but then they would all go out in the back and drink beer and have tacos afterwards, and these crazy conversations across companies would come up. So this is like the Department of Education Victoria's Secret, kind of like mingling in the backyard over tacos and beers. And it's like, what would you think they would have in common? But you'd be surprised, right? There's not enough forums where they can actually have those conversations, which was what we were kind of prototyping there. And it turns out people were really excited about that, right? Having those conversations. It turned out to be a good press thing for us. And some of these companies that we admire for so long, all we had to do was send an email and say, hey, we're doing this thing. They're like, yes, I'm all in. How can we be a part of it? Because they're thirsty for this, right? This inspiration. Companies like OXO and Brooklyn Brewery. And then this is the last one. This is a project we did. Who's familiar with Donors Choose in here? Some people? They call themselves kind of the Kickstarter for classrooms. So teachers can post a project. I want to buy instruments for my classroom. It's going to cost $3,000. Who wants to chip in? They were trying to figure out what does it look like for community amongst the education world. How is community defined? So they brought that challenge to us, and we structured a class around it over 8 weeks and had 22 people actually do a design thinking project for them. And this was kind of the closing bit. This is our students mixed with the Donors Choose team. And I think this is something that we're kind of excited about moving into the future, is how can we close that conversation between companies and the customers they're trying to serve. With that, I think my closing thought is just always be learning. Obviously education is a big piece of it, but the most important thing we've learned is that you're never, or shouldn't ever be the smartest person in the room, so be open to listening and learning pretty much everything. I would also just like to reiterate, we've got a design thinking boot camp. If you guys are into design thinking, I think there's a handful of tickets left on Saturday. But even more than that, can we just give a round of applause for these guys? Design Thinking Miami, Refresh, and Refresh. This is like so much amazing. I've never been so excited to come to a city with having never visited it before. It was just so much energy building up to this, which was amazing. And I will leave my information up. Please shoot me a note if you guys have questions or anything. And then I'm going to turn it over to Refresh for a little Q&A.
So we're going to do a few minutes Q&A. We have about 20 minutes, so it's about 5 questions. As to tickets for the boot camp, we have 2 tickets left. So if you're interested, feel for it. Who has a question?
Hey, cool talk. Thanks for sharing your knowledge here. My question's about, everyone's got cool ideas, but the execution is really the hard part. And say you're at a point in your life where you got some time, you got all these ideas. How do you kind of narrow down, you mentioned these 5 phases, how do you figure out which ideas you're going to really get behind if you only have time to do 1 or 2 things, but you have all these different competing concepts?
Yeah, so that's a really good question. There's two thoughts that come to mind. One is something a lot of our clients talk about and organizations is that it's not as much about the idea as what is the project where I can apply this process to, and like where's the right place to, I'm pointing to this but it's not up there anymore, where's the right place to aim this energy of a process. And I think the best answer I've heard so far is aim it at the problems and challenges that have the most significant impact for the future of your business, right? So the biggest challenges, the things that you don't have any idea what the answer is, you're not sure exactly what your customer feels about it, but you know it's going to be really important, that's when you want to start applying this stuff. In terms of ideas, there's really no right answer. I was talking to someone from Behance the other day, which is a cool online design portfolio site, and he said he had good advice, which I thought was, if you have a great idea, work on it solo and incubate it to a point where it gets some traction before sharing it out. And I think that, in relation to the process, is good because it should feel very iterative, right? It's not like, this is the idea, this is the process it's going to go through. It should be like, I'm going to go through this process by myself over the course of an hour, get it to a point where I can share it with someone, ask for permission to do it on a longer scale, and then go from there.
Cool. Before we get to the next question, in case somebody wants to go, as Brian said, this is part of our summer startup series, so it's a series of 3 events: ideation, product market fit, that kind of stuff. In next month, we're doing funding, so all the different types of funding mechanisms, and then finally launching your product and actually acquiring customers, growth hacking techniques, things like that. Followed by, in September, our demo days. So our goal is that you guys apply some of these techniques, come to these next couple Startup Series events, and then pitch something in September. So just letting that out there before we go to the next question. So, next question. Any other questions? Go.
What would you say is like a good time, let's say when you do the open, examine, and close?
Uh-huh.
When do you know you've kind of saturated the examine and start switching over to close?
Good question. So the question was, when you're talking about open, explore, close, how do you know when to shift from explore into close? The thing I would say is what we call time boxing, right? Put a time limit on it. Like any creative pursuit, writing a book, writing a song, cooking a dish, painting a picture, you can go on forever, right? There's no ending to it. So put a constraint on it and let yourself know when you have to close by. And then we often say have a facilitator to help get to that kind of endpoint. And it just keeps you moving forward.
And then, alright, once let's say you go and you get out of bed and it's closed, would you ever revisit anything to try to like maybe, hey, this might like change something, or once you close and you execute and ship it out, you're done, you don't do it again?
Yeah, totally. There's no right answer. I think it's the benefit of it isn't about following like the rigid process each time. It's about having that conversation. So it's like, this is what we need to close on for today, or maybe this meeting's all about opening, right? We just want to have as many ideas as we can. Next week we're going to have a session to try and close on it. So I'd say, rather than giving you an answer, I would say have that conversation with your team, like based on it. Share that language with them and set those goals with them. Yeah.
Yeah. When you approach the customer, how do you know the right kind of engagement? I mean, is it like an interview at the home, like an example, or just like an online survey with email, whatever? How do you know what you're looking for?
Totally. Yeah, so there's two things to think about. The question was, how do you know what type of research to do with customers based on the need? A lot of companies, organizations, if you're a larger one, you have a whole market research team, right? Larger companies have that benefit. So the thing I would say is if you're doing a bigger scope project, a really important challenge, that you've got some money, I would recommend doing a proper research phase, right? Like figuring out who are the people we need to talk to, why are we talking to them, what is the number of people we need to talk to, really spending that time digging in, which will probably be a mix of interviews and intercepts and competitive research and quantitative research. The flip side of that is kind of that mindset behavior side, that every day you can be out kind of building customer stories and empathies. Are you guys familiar with Shake Shack? Is there a Shake Shack here? Yeah. The room just woke up again, it was awesome. So Danny Meyer, the guy that started Shake Shack and a bunch of really good restaurants, he talks about it as, he wrote a book called Setting the Table. It's one of my favorite books. It's about customer experience through the lens of hospitality. And he talks about it as collecting stories and connecting stories. And every day he walks around his restaurants and he's always collecting stories. Every single day he'll walk in, talk to the maitre d', the bartender, a customer. Over time, he's able to start connecting those dots in his head. And that's how it shows up on the other side. You don't need to have a full research budget. You can be collecting those stories no matter who you are. Yeah. So I'm long-winded. 5 questions becomes like 2.
Since I'm not passing out the mic, can you like repeat it so the camera picks it up?
Definitely.
So in our startup environment, it's always, speed to market, right?
Yeah.
One of those things that I think is always challenging when looking at these type of methodologies is how do you balance speed to market with having substantial research to be able to actually have a quality product?
Mm-hmm.
Why don't you speak a little more about sort of how do you balance those needs and bring some of your experience in?
Yeah, that's always the big problem, right? There's so many good methodologies out there. When you're in the heat of it, the question was, how do you know when to bring this process in if you're in a startup who's moving fast, trying to ship, while also balancing quality? Like, what role does this play? As a founder and on a 3-person team, 3-year-old company, who's on the ground, like teaching workshops and all that, the thing I would say is we use this process most as checkpoints. So it's like, great idea, because we're always bringing ideas. Awesome idea, how can we actually go out and learn in a low barrier, quick way to validate if that's the right direction we want to go. Now in a startup environment, that might be something real simple. Like we do this pretty often, is we'll have a group of people over for brunch at one of the partners' houses and just learn and listen for 3 hours. hey, we've got this idea, we're thinking this direction, what do you think? And that's a quick way for us to validate or redirect us before we go into re-examining that idea. So little checkpoints like that. And the open, explore, and close, we use that in meetings almost every day just to make sure we're on the same page. Now, if we're looking at a bigger challenge, like what's the future of our business, which we do, that's where we'll actually plan this out over a little bit more time. And we'll go out and do a proper research over 2 or 3 months, kind of as a side initiative, just to make sure the business is going the right direction.
That follow-up.
Sure.
So looking at that, I think, I agree with you, but how do you condense that 2 or 3 months into 2 or 3 weeks because of, how quickly you go to market?
Yeah.
So is there anything that had, kind of delivered for a client much faster than the actual research would take? Because I think internally you can always align and it's always easy to negotiate.
Mm-hmm.
But when you're looking at a product market fit and then just the time to go over market, I think it's key. How can you still apply these concepts while still, kind of balancing between the three things which I always do, so the business, technology, and then also sort of
Yeah, a good example, we were doing, one of the things we do with Capital One, actually the group that was in the picture I showed, they went back up to their office in Toronto, they're like, this stuff's awesome. The Toronto office was very new, the Canada market was new for them, and there was a lot of questions they hadn't answered yet that the US had solved a while back. They went back and there was this thing that they hadn't cracked for they'd been talking about it for a year, and they kept putting it off because it was too big, it was going to take too much time, too much money. So what they did is they said, listen, forget that, we've been joking around with this for too long, let's set up 5 weeks. It's going to be a half day, 3 times a week. Whoever can come can come, whoever can't, we're going to keep moving forward. And over that 5 weeks, they did amazing research. They set up a partnership with the barber shop downstairs, and they got the barbers to start sending people up after they would get their hair cut to get a $20 Starbucks card and then do a quick interview with them. So they were getting crazy research real quick, and at the end of that 5 weeks, they'd only given a day and a half a week in half-day increments, but they were able to immediately move that conversation so much faster, and they got stuff to market the very next week because there was so many low-barrier wins that they could just bring to life so quickly. Any other questions? Cool.
One more.
Yeah.
Do you have any advice for startups?
Any advice for startups?
I know there's many, but just from your personal experience.
Yeah. I think my heart just started beating faster. I'm like, man, I don't know.
Because I see that most of the examples you show are bigger corporations.
Yeah.
But you did mention you had some startups that work with you. So I just want to know, how is that different?
Yeah, how's it different? I think.
Besides the budget, of course.
Yeah. The way for startups, I think, you can use a lot of these principles. A lot of times in the early days of a company, it ends up being just as much about the internal culture as it does the actual product that you're putting to market.
For example, when the startup, let's say, goes to you guys for the design there, let's say for the weekend, I'm not sure if that's how it works.
Yeah.
How is the different approach when you have a startup company rather than their secret or one of the Capital One,
Yeah.
They're coming with a completely different mindset. Because I've worked corporate and I've now freelancing, so I just kind of want to see how you see that.
Yeah. We have one example I can give is the Kimi startup. It's a company that has kiosks where you can go and get a copy of your key made, and it's held on file so that if you get locked out of your house, you can go and hit a button that prints out a new key for you. Yeah, it's interesting. They came to us in the early stages and they were trying to figure out how to boost adoption amongst these vending machines. They had clearly come on a very important need. They had a great idea, they'd gotten funding on it, but they couldn't figure out how to get adoption up. It was a very specific challenge. In terms of the process, it looks pretty similar, honestly. It's just for them, they're usually stuck in the last 3 stages. We got a good idea, we got it to market, we got funding, we're marketing it, people aren't using it. It's red flag, you gotta go do some research, you gotta figure out why people aren't using it. With big corporate companies, when they come to us, we still use the same process, it's usually just a different part of it that we have to emphasize because they're seeing is how do we become a little bit faster and more nimble and entrepreneurial, and it's you need to focus on the incubation of ideas as opposed to the actual rollout of it. Do we have time for
Yeah, just one though.
One more, all right.
I'm just curious about it. What did you learn about it? Why were the people not using that key?
Oh, we can, I don't know if I can divulge too much more information about it.
Oh, okay.
But it was a user behavior challenge.
Because I'm making keys like this every day.
Oh, this is why I have to learn to hold my tongue in moments. His interview skills are too good for me already. It was a user behavior challenge though. It was something that was a breakdown in what made users feel comfortable about using their service, which was pretty interesting.
Well, you can ask him when we close it. That way we hold everyone back. So we actually, I think we're sold out. We have one more ticket, 5 minutes to go. Let's see.
Wow. Yeah.
We still got one more.
One more. So the boot camp, what it'll look like on Saturday, we're going to walk through all 5 phases of the design thinking process on a real challenge that is Miami related. I'll cliffhang it there. It's a very interactive day. It's fun. It's very practice based. The thing about design thinking is if you go out and start researching it, there's tons of books, there's tons of talks, there's tons of people thinking and writing about it. Until you really start practicing it, it's for nothing, right? The benefit is not design thinking, the benefit is the impact that can come from using it. So we always make it very project-based, and that's how Saturday is going to flow. It's very collaborative, so you'll walk out with a set of good friends, and then we've got a great team of facilitators from Design Thinking Miami who's going to be coaching every step of the way. So.
And we'll have bagels and donuts.
Bagels and donuts. Yeah. What else do you need?
Well, thank you. Thank you for coming. Thank you so much.